Hello, friends, and welcome to Jewels of Truth. My name is Daniel Fontenot, and today we will be discussing, again, this is another study on Daniel chapter 6. This is going to be the last segment of this study on Daniel chapter 6, and we have been learning how this chapter, the experience of people always know this chapter as the chapter of Daniel in the lion's den. And we have been discovering how this chapter symbolizes the end of the world and the issues that are involved at the end of the world. And we have entitled this study, Jesus Will Defeat the One World Government. And let's see how Jesus in this study will defeat the one world government. So we read in Daniel chapter 6 and verse 12, "Then they came near," that is, these men who hated Daniel, "they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree," and we have learned that the decree there in Daniel chapter 6 symbolizes the Sunday law decree at the end of the world, and of course this is also the death decree. "Hast thou not signed a decree that every man that shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, save of thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, The thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not." We've also discovered that the Medes and the Persians, the kingdom of Medo-Persia, symbolizes the United States of America at the end of the world. If you want to understand how that can be, then you have to go back and watch the previous videos on this study. So, we see here that King Darius was deceived in regards to the intentions of these men that hated Daniel. He didn't understand that they hated Daniel, and they wanted to see him out of the way. They were jealous of him. In the book, The Great Controversy, page 624, it says, "Fearful sights of a supernatural character will soon be revealed in the heavens, in token of the power of miracle-working demons. The spirits of devils will go forth to the kings of the earth and to the whole world to fasten them in deception and urge them on to unite with Satan in his last struggle against the government of God. By these agencies, rulers and subjects will alike be deceived." I probably should have put this in the study, but I didn't think about it till now. We do mention Revelation 16, but I should have been more explanatory in my explanation of these things, but we'll explain them now. So you can see here in this statement that Sister White is quoting in part Revelation 16, verse 12. "And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared." And verse 13, "And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are," and verse 14, "for they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty." And of course, that's the battle of Armageddon. But let's go back to verse 13. It mentions the mouth, these spirits, these 3 unclean spirits come out of the mouth of the dragon and of the beast and of the false prophet. The dragon here is, in one way of speaking, spiritualism. Another way of speaking, it is the UN, the United Nations, the one world government. Or they're trying to enforce a one world government. And the beast, which is the Roman Catholic Church, the papacy, and the false prophet, which is apostate Protestant America. Okay, these are the ones that go forth to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to fasten them in deception and urge them on to unite with Satan in his last struggle against the government of God. By these agencies, rulers and subjects will be alike deceived. All right? And we have here Testimonies to Ministers, page 38. Kings and rulers and governors have placed upon themselves the brand of Antichrist and are represented as the dragon who goes to make war with the saints, with those who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. Daniel, in the book of Daniel, chapter 6, represents the people of God at the end of the world who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. And we know that the faith of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. They have the spirit of prophecy. They have the writings of Ellen G. White, and they keep the commandments of God. And these kings and rulers and governors, they go forth to make war. They have the brand of Antichrist upon them. They have the mark of the beast upon them, and they are as represented as the dragon who goes to make war with the saints, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. All right? So that's what is going on there in Daniel chapter 6. We see all of this represented in Daniel chapter 6. Darius was deceived like the kings and the rulers at the end of the world will be deceived. And then you see here Revelation 16, 13, and 14. All right? Okay, now we have Signs of the Times, November 4th, 1889. When Daniel had been exalted in the court of Babylon, he was not free from trial and temptation. The wise men of the court were filled with envy and plotted for his destruction. How earnestly the enemies of Daniel watched for an opportunity to accuse him before the king. But they decided that they could find nothing against him except in his fidelity to his God. They induced the king to frame a decree according to the custom of the Medes and Persians that could not be changed, to the effect that if any man for 30 days offered prayer to anyone except the king, he should be thrown into the den of lions. The king was flattered by this proposition, and as he did not understand the motive that prompted it, he signed the desired decree and made it a law. This is the same thing. You see it all the time in regards to the politicians, presidents, etc. of this world. They are deceived in regards to the plotting of especially the papacy, but also people in the Protestant world. They are deceived in regards, the kings and rulers of this world, they are deceived in regards to the motives of the so-called religious people in this world, the so-called Christians of this world. The king was flattered by this proposition as he did not understand the motive that prompted it, and he signed the decree and made it a law, made the Sunday law. Did these men think because they had deceived Darius that they had deceived the Lord also? Did they consider that? Did they think that because they had deceived Darius, that they had deceived the Lord also? No, they hadn't. They didn't deceive God. They deceived the king. Okay, the next passage here from Review and Herald, December 26, 1899. As Christ was hated without cause, so will his people be hated because they were obedient to the commandments of God. If he who was pure, holy, and undefiled, who did good and only good in our world, was treated as a base criminal, that's Jesus, and condemned to death, his disciples must expect but similar treatment, however faultless they may be, however faultless may be their life and blameless their character. Jesus, he was not a base criminal, but he was pure and holy and undefiled. He did only that which was good, but they hated him. Human enactments, laws manufactured by satanic agencies under a plea of goodness, yes, that's the plea, a plea of goodness and restriction of evil. Yes, they will say, well, the Sunday law is good. People will get to rest. This is what they're always saying. And it will restrict evil. Okay? Human enactments, laws manufactured by satanic agencies under a plea of goodness and restriction of evil will be exalted, while God's holy commandments are despised and trampled underfoot. And all who prove their loyalty by obedience to the law of Jehovah must be prepared to be arrested, to be brought before councils that have not for their standard the high and holy law of God. Now, you may be joining us here on this channel for the first time, and you may be thinking, what in the world is this guy talking about? Notice here at the end of this paragraph that I've just read, it says that these people who arrest or who cause to be arrested God's people, they have not for their standard the high and holy law of God. Do not the Christian churches today preach that the law of God is null and void? You know, they say, we're not under the old law. We don't have to keep God's commandments. You know, we don't have to keep the holy Sabbath. Their standard is obviously not the high and holy law of God. We have to admit that. It goes on, the same spirit that moved the priests and rulers had moved Cain to slay his brother. It is the apostasy from truth that works in the children of disobedience to silence the voice of those who are calling them to obedience. And today this spirit is manifested in the churches that are trampling upon the Word of God and transgressing His holy law. They know not what spirit they are of, nor the end of the dark tunnel through which they are passing. Deceived, deluded, blind, they are hastening forward to the first and the second death. The vast tide of human will and human passion is leading to things they do not dream of when they discarded the law of Jehovah for the inventions of men to cause oppression and suffering to human beings. You think that the men who hated Daniel even dreamed of the fact that they would be eventually thrown into the den of lions themselves? Now, I know this is not what this is speaking of here, okay? Today, you know, there are people that are blinded in regards to the Sunday movement. It's not out in the open. It's in the dark. They don't dream of the fact, of the truth, that they will actually cause to be put to death God's innocent people. The churches have been converted to the world, and they show what they would do in this age of the world if they dared. If Christ were in the world today, many would have no more desire for Him than had the Jewish nation at His first advent. They would do as did the Jews. Were it in their power, they would crucify Christ because he tells them the truth. Many are being educated up to this point. Rulers and teachers who have caused souls to stumble over their perverted teachings, all persons who might have understood the prophecies, but who did not read and search to see if they were applicable to this time and concern their individual selves, will be taken in the snare and suffer eternal loss. They will suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. And how true this is. Rulers and teachers have caused souls, teachers, this is not talking about school teachers, this is talking about religious teachers, ministers, who have caused souls to stumble over their perverted teachings. And their perverted teachings have caused people to think, well, I don't need to search in the Scriptures to see if these prophecies concern me individually. These people will be destroyed, and that without remedy. The rulers, the teachers, and the people they have deceived. Daniel chapter 6, verses 8 and 13. Now, O king, establish the decree. This is concerning how the rulers now will be stirred up. So these men that hated Daniel, they came to the king and they said, now, O king, establish the decree. Make this Sunday law and sign the writing that it be not changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Then answered they and said before the king, that Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regardeth not thee, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but maketh his petition 3 times a day. Now, one thing that I should have done, and I think I've already done it in previous studies in regards to Daniel chapter 6, but let's put this in the record here. The decree, okay, the decree, yes, I remember I did put that in previous studies. What is the decree? You know, the decree there is, of course, you know, that they said that nobody, there in Daniel chapter 6, that no one is allowed to make a petition to any god except thee, O king, for 30 days, okay? Well, that decree symbolizes the decree which is spoken of in Revelation chapter 13. And that decree is in Revelation chapter 15 and starting at verse 14, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed, and causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. That is the decree which Daniel chapter 6 is pointing forward to in the future. It symbolizes that decree in Revelation chapter 13. All right. In Great Controversy, page 608, I'm not going to read the entire paragraph, but it says, when Sabbath keepers are brought before the courts to answer for their faith, these apostates which have denied the truth, they have joined the ranks of the opposition, they abandoned their position and joined the ranks of the opposition. These Seventh-day Adventists, it's obviously Seventh-day Adventists is speaking of here, these apostates are the most efficient agents of Satan to misrepresent and accuse them and by false reports and insinuations to what? To stir up the rulers against them, just like those who hated Daniel in Daniel chapter 6 stirred up King Darius against him. All right? And this is going on along with the same thought. Rulers yield to the popular demand. Great Controversy, page 592. The dignitaries of church and state will unite to bribe, persuade, or compel all classes to honor the Sunday. The lack of divine authority will be supplied by oppressive enactments. Political corruption is destroying love of justice and regard for truth. And even in free America, just like in the Medo-Persian Empire, rulers and legislators, in order to secure public favor, will yield to the popular demand for a law enforcing Sunday observance. Liberty of conscience, which has cost so great a sacrifice, will no longer be respected. In the soon coming conflict, we shall see exemplified the prophet's words. The dragon was wroth with the woman, the devil was wroth with the church, and went to make war with who? The remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Great Controversy 592. Here again, the popular demand. Rulers yield to the popular demand. As the Sabbath has become the special point of controversy throughout Christendom, and religious and secular authorities have combined to enforce the observance of the Sunday, the persistent refusal of a small minority, that remnant, to yield to the popular demand will make them objects of universal execration, a universal curse. It will be urged that the few, the remnant, who stand in opposition to an institution of the church and a law of the state ought not to be tolerated, that it is better for them to suffer than for whole nations to be thrown into confusion and lawlessness. The same argument many centuries ago was brought against Christ by the rulers of the people. All right, that was Great Controversy 615 to 616. Daniel chapter 6 and verse 14. Then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased with himself, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him, and he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. So now the king he's undeceived. He sees what is afoot. He sees how these men have deceived him. He didn't realize how much they hated Daniel. And we see a very similar, not exactly the same thing, but a very similar thing going on in Matthew chapter 14, verses 3 through 9, in regards to the martyrdom of John the Baptist. For Herod had laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. Herodias here representing the papacy and or the church. Yeah, the papacy, the Catholic Church, and Herod representing the state, the political power. For John said unto him, this John representing God's people at the end of the world, for John said unto him, it is not lawful for thee to have her. You shouldn't combine church and state. And when he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, give me here John the Baptist's head in a charger. And the king was sorry. Just like Darius in Daniel chapter 6 was sore displeased with himself Only the difference is here that Herod didn't do what Darius did and tried to deliver John the Baptist. The king was sorry, nevertheless, for the oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given her. So he went ahead and approved the beheading of John the Baptist. That's not what that's not what Darius did, that is. All right? But I wanted you to see the similarity in that, Herod was sorry, but he wasn't sorry enough to prevent John the Baptist's beheading. Great Controversy 6:10 tells us, okay, this is what I'm doing here is emphasizing again what it says that Darius, he set his heart on Daniel to deliver him, okay? And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. All right? This is prefiguring Great Controversy 610. Notice, but so long as Jesus remains man's intercessor in the sanctuary above, the restraining influence of the Holy Spirit is felt by rulers and people. I should have bolded the word and that whole phrase right there. The restraining influence of the Holy Spirit is felt by rulers and people. Do you think that Darius felt the restraining influence of the Holy Spirit upon him? I would say yes. It still controls, to some extent, the laws of the land. Were it not for these laws, the condition of the world would be much worse than it now is. While many of our rulers are active agents of Satan, God also has his agents among the leading men of the nation. The enemy moves upon his servants to propose measures that would greatly impede the work of God. This is the same thing that happens there in Daniel chapter 6. The devil moved upon his servants, those men that hated Daniel, to propose measures, this decree, that would greatly impede the work of God. But statesmen who fear the Lord, okay, here's another class of statesmen, politicians, who fear the Lord are influenced by holy angels to oppose such propositions. And it is implied in Daniel chapter 6 that Darius tried to oppose the propositions of these men who hated Daniel. But statesmen who fear the Lord are influenced by holy angels who oppose such propositions with unanswerable arguments. Thus, a few men will hold in check a powerful current of evil. The opposition of the enemies of truth will be restrained, that the third angel's message may do its work. When the final warning shall be given, it will arrest the attention of these leading men through whom the Lord is now working, and some of them will accept it and will stand with the people of God through the time of trouble. I'm just realizing here something I've never really thought about very much, but it says that these leading men, who are these leading men? Again, they are statesmen. People in the government. Do you realize that this is saying that it says clearly that these leading men, they will stand through the time of trouble with God's people. Well, who stands through the time of trouble with God's people? Isn't it the 144,000? Because after the close of probation, there aren't any martyrs. It would seem to me, and if I'm wrong, you can correct me, it would seem to me that some of these politicians will be a part of the 144,000. Let's go on. Okay, now, in the study previous to this one, which was entitled Satan's Confederacy Defeated, it was shown that in Daniel chapter 6, the men who hated Daniel, including the presidents, governors, princes, counselors, and captains, assembled three times, in order to move the king to sign and enforce the decree to prohibit anyone from petitioning any god except the king for 30 days. Notice that the decree was not enforced until verse 16, after those men had assembled 3 times. This represents the restraining of the opposition of the enemies of truth, that the third angel's message may do its work. I didn't realize this till today. I was wondering for a while, what does it mean that these men assembled 3 times before the king? This is progressive. The king didn't sign it right away, and he did not enforce it until halfway through the chapter. This is representing the restraining of the opposition of the enemies of truth, that the third angel's message may do its work. Praise the Lord. And Darius labored till the going down of the sun to deliver Daniel. What does it mean? What does this mean? I'm only going to read the first sentence in this paragraph. You can read the rest of it for yourself later. From Review and Herald, March 27, 1894. The coming of Christ will be as it were at midnight, when all are sleeping. It will be well for everyone to have his accounts all straightened up before sunset. Does not sunset come before midnight? So sunset represents the close of probation here. That's what's being implied here. Okay? We have to have all our accounts straightened up before sunset. This is not talking about just, money-wise. Okay? Accounts with God, accounts with our fellow neighbor, our fellow person, our fellow man, our fellow woman, whatever. We must have our accounts settled before sunset, before probation closes. All right? And then we have this next one here from Review and Herald, December 31st, 1901. Christ reads the heart. He knows the motives that prompt to action. Let us watch ourselves. Let us weed our own gardens before we attempt to weed the gardens of others. Let not a day pass in known sin. God says, let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Before the setting of the sun, settle every difficulty. Thus you will gain a victory over self. Again, this implies the close of probation. Before the setting of sun, okay, we have to settle our accounts. This is what it is represented there in Daniel chapter 6, when Daniel labored till the going down of the sun to deliver Daniel. All right. Daniel chapter 6, verses 15 to 17. Then these men assembled unto the king, and said unto the king, Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians is, that no decree nor statute which the king establishes may be changed. Why did they say that to the king? Because the king he saw what they were up to, and he was resisting, trying to find a loophole to get out of this. He didn't want to see his friend Daniel, his favorite servant, destroyed. But these men, they were determined, and they said, Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians is that no decree nor statute which the king establisheth may be changed. Then the king commanded, so the king finally realized, I'm not going to be able to convince these guys not to carry out this wicked deed. And the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, Thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. And a stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. Okay, so they put at the mouth of the den a stone, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords. Okay, we have a similar thing going on in concerning during the crucifixion of Christ in Matthew 27:62 to 66. Now the next day that followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees came together unto Daniel, saying, Sir, we remember that deceiver said, while he was yet alive, After 3 days I will rise again. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say unto the people, He is risen from the dead. So the last error shall be worse than the first. Pilate said unto them, Ye have a watch, go your way, make it as sure as ye can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone and setting a watch. So in the same way as King Darius sealed the stone, so these men, these priests and Pharisees, the chief priests and Pharisees, they had the soldiers seal the stone with the king's signet and setting a watch. Okay, you had a watch there of guards. Notice here, Sister White. I'm not going to read the entire paragraph here, but it says, 3 days after his crucifixion, after Christ's crucifixion, the mighty angels of heaven parted the darkness from their track and rolled the stone from the sepulchre. The seal of the government was broken. Wow. The seal of the government was broken, and the Roman guards placed there to keep the tomb from all disturbance, lest the disciples might come and steal away the body of Jesus, fell to the earth as dead. The angel of the Lord appeared, whose countenance was like lightning, and his raiment as white as snow, and for fear of him the keepers did quake and became as dead men. Christ came forth from the tomb, a mighty conqueror over death and the grave, and he ascended up on high, there to intercede for us as a merciful and faithful high priest who is touched with the feeling of our infirmities. So this seal that, the seal that made sure that the stone could not be removed from the grave of Christ, from the sepulchre of Christ, Sister White calls this the seal of the government. So we can justly say that the seal in the book of Daniel chapter 6 is the seal of the government. All right? And it makes me wonder if maybe this could be representing the mark of the beast. But I'm not going to go there. The Desire of Ages, page 778. So weak men counseled and planned. This is speaking again about the attempt by the religious leaders in Christ's day to make sure that Christ could not be taken out of his sepulchre. So weak men counseled and planned. Little did these murderers realize the uselessness of their efforts. But by their action, God was glorified. The very efforts made to prevent Christ's resurrection are the most convincing arguments in its proof. The greater the number of soldiers placed around the tomb, the stronger would be the testimony that he had risen. Hundreds of years before the death of Christ, the Holy Spirit had declared through the psalmist, "Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together," just like in Daniel chapter 6, "against the Lord, and against his anointed. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision." Roman guards and Roman arms were powerless to confine the Lord of life within the tomb. The hour of his release was near. Very similar to Daniel chapter 6. The very efforts made to prevent Daniel from escaping out of the lion's den are the most convincing arguments of his proof that Daniel was delivered from the lion's den. All right, Daniel chapter 6, 18 to 23. Then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. Neither were instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. Then the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste unto the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel, and the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel, and hath shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me, forasmuch as before him innocency was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. Then was the king exceeding glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel out of the den. So Daniel was taken out of the den, and no manner of hurt was found upon him, because he believed in his God. Who do those lions represent? Manuscript Police's volume 21, page 43 tells us, "Pray with simple faith. In the future world we shall see what great victories have been won by the prayer of faith. Prayer has subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions. Not only beasts of prey, but human beings. Quenched the violence of fire." We shall know what this means when we hear the reports of the martyrs who died for their faith and felt no pain. "Escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens." Hebrews 11, 33 and 34 in Manuscript Police's volume 21, page 43. So, those lions in Daniel chapter 6 represent human beings. The mouths of human beings are going to be stopped. Yes, we shall see that here in just a moment. But before we go there, I want to mention something here. You know, for years I have believed and I have said that I believe that the martyrs who died during the Dark Ages, when they were burned at the stake, when there were whatever pain, they didn't feel any pain. Now, you might make the exception. I know Sister White speaks of, and I'm being reminded as I'm saying this, that Sister White, when she's speaking about the martyrs there in Great Controversy, somewhere in the book, The Great Controversy, she says that these people who were tortured, the martyrs they were tortured, some of them before they died, and it says something like they hailed death as a sweet relief. So they must have been experiencing some excruciating pain. But nevertheless, it says here, we shall know what this means, because it says quenched the violence of fire. So evidently these martyrs who died in they were burned to death at the stake, they didn't feel any pain. Because it says, quenched the violence of fire. He says, we shall know what this means when we hear the reports of the martyrs who died for their faith and felt no pain. Okay, let's go on. So, and again, these lions represent human beings whose mouths are stopped. Stopped. All right? In the book Great Controversy, page 635, this is speaking about the second coming of Christ, just prior to the second coming of Christ, when the protection of human laws shall be withdrawn from those who honor the law of God, there will be in different lands a simultaneous movement for their destruction. As the time appointed in the decree draws near, that's the death decree, the people will conspire to root out the hated sect. It will be determined to strike in one night a decisive blow which shall utterly silence the voice of dissent and reproof. This was the object of the men who hated Daniel. They wanted to silence the voice of dissent and reproof. Even his life was a reproof to them. The people of God, some in prison cells, some hidden in solitary retreats in the forest and the mountains, still plead for divine protection, while in every quarter companies of armed men, urged on by hosts of evil angels, are preparing for the work of death. It is now, in the hour of utmost extremity. You think that Daniel was in his hour of utmost extremity when he was thrown into the den of lions? It is now, in the hour of utmost extremity, that the God of Israel will interpose for the deliverance of his chosen. And that's the same with Daniel. God interposed for the deliverance of his chosen one, Daniel. Saith the Lord, you shall have a song, as in the night when the holy solemnity is kept, and gladness of heart, as when one goeth to come into the mountain of the Lord, to the mighty one of Israel. And the Lord shall cause his glorious voice to be heard, and shall show the lighting down of his arm, with the indignation of his anger, and with the flame of a devouring fire, with scattering and tempest and hailstones. Isaiah 30, 29 to 30. Before we finish with that paragraph, it says, you shall have a song as in the night when the holy solemnity is kept. When was Daniel in the lion's den? What time of the day? Evidently, it was at night, because the king, it says, his sleep went from him. He tried to sleep. He couldn't sleep all night. Okay, so Daniel was in the lion's den at night, going on. And you can count on it that he was singing. He was singing. You shall have a song as in the night when the holy solemnity is kept, and gladness of heart. Okay? With shouts of triumph, jeering, and imprecation, throngs of evil men are about to rush upon their prey, when lo, a dense blackness, deeper than the darkness of the night, falls upon the earth. Then a rainbow, shining with the glory from the throne of God, spans the heavens and seems to encircle each praying company. The angry multitudes are what? They're suddenly arrested. Their mocking cries die away. This is the stopping of the mouths of the lions. Their mocking cries die away. The objects of their murderous rage are forgotten. With fearful forebodings they gaze upon the symbol of God's covenant and long to be shielded from its overpowering brightness. The Great Controversy, page 635. And we have here Daniel 6:24. And the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel, and cast them into the den of lions, them, their children, and their wives, and the lions had the mastery of them, and brake all their bones in pieces, or ever they came at the bottom of the den. So now, after the king, the king has already been undeceived. He realizes what they are up to. But whenever Daniel was delivered from the den of lions, the king was very angry. It says he was wroth, as we shall see here in a moment. Manuscript Releases, Volume 3, page 95. Daniel was brought to a test, and he purposed in his heart that he would worship the true God, notwithstanding the decree. Just like God's people, even though there has been a decree that says if you don't worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in your right hand or forehead, you will be killed. Even though that decree has been put in force, God's people will purpose in their hearts that they will worship the true God. He, Daniel, here saw that principle was at stake, and because of integrity, he was cast into the lion's den. But here, God did not forget him. All heaven had been watching his case to see if he would be faithful to his God. When the trial came, angels were his companions. Angels were in the lion's den with him. They stopped the lions' mouths and delivered him. When the king saw the real object of the wise men to rid Daniel of his power, then the king was wroth and destroyed the enemies of Daniel. The king was wroth and destroyed the enemies of Daniel, just like the 10 kings at the end of the world will be wroth, and they will really be wroth or angry when they realize that they have been deceived, and some of them have lost their eternal lives. Revelation 17:12-17, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings. That's 10 kings of the earth, these nations that gathered together against God's people. The 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings. This is the one world government, which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind. This is the one world government, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, Jesus Christ, and the Lamb shall overcome them. Jesus shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he saith unto them, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore, great Babylon, sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. This is exactly what Daniel chapter 6 is representing, is symbolizing, when King Darius, after Daniel was delivered out of the den of lions, he was angry with these men that had accused Daniel, and he threw them into the den of lions. For God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. Now notice it says that these men whom the king threw in, he had them thrown into the den of lions. It says that the lions break all their bones in pieces. Well, Isaiah 8, 9, and 10 says, associate yourselves, O ye people, and ye shall be broken in pieces. And give ear, all ye far countries, gird yourselves, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Gird yourselves, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Take counsel together, and it shall come to naught. Speak the word, and it shall not stand, for God is with us. So just as these men assembled themselves 3 times unto the king, it says here, 3 times they shall be broken in pieces. Daniel chapter 6, verses 25 to 28. Then King Darius wrote unto all people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, Peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is a living God and steadfast forever, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. His kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivereth and rescueth, and worketh signs and wonders in heaven and in earth, who hath delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. It's interesting here that at the end of Daniel chapter 6 is represented the second coming of Christ, because it says his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. It's following the same pattern as at the end of the world. You have the accusation of the wicked against God's people. They move upon, get the exact word here, they move upon the king. They urge the kings, the governments of this world, to enact a Sunday law against God's people. The rulers are stirred up. Okay? Then finally, God's people are persecuted. And then finally, their accusers, their mouths are stopped. They are destroyed. And then you have the second coming of Christ. And that's what you have here. Also in Daniel 2:44. Daniel chapter 2, verse 44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall what? Break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. There you have it. Again, it's amazing how the same pattern that you have there in Daniel chapter 6. Let me repeat this. Daniel chapter 6. You have God's innocent people represented by Daniel. You have the wicked that come together and assemble together to find out how to get rid of God's people. In Daniel chapter 6, it's Daniel. Daniel represents God's people at the end of the world. These wicked accuse the rulers and kings and presidents of this world. They accuse God's people before these kings and rulers. They say, we need to get rid of them. Their customs are different. Their doctrines are different than all the rest of the world. They're a problem. Then they convince these leaders of the nations to persecute God's people. At the end, things are reversed, and the accusers of God's people are destroyed, and then you have the second coming of Christ. Amazing. Well, that brings us to the end of our study on Daniel chapter 6. We hope that this has been a blessing to all. And if you appreciate this type of content, then by all means, like button so that it can be sent far and wide to those who are hungering for the bread of life. And if you have any questions or comments, then place them at the bottom of this video. And if you haven't subscribed, we would highly encourage you to do so. We thank you for joining us here at Jewels of Truth. We hope and pray that you will have a good day in the Lord.